Did you know that nearly 80% of voters in the US believe politicians need to be charismatic to win elections? Yet, the reality is often quite different. In fact, many of the longest-serving leaders in history are not the loudest or most exciting, they're the most boring. Think about it. How many times have we seen a flashy candidate come and go, only to be replaced by someone who seems less thrilling but stays in power for years? Surprisingly, research shows that boring politicians tend to have higher approval ratings during tough times. When people feel uncertain, they often prefer leaders who project stability over those who make bold promises. This might explain why figures like Angela Merkel in Germany and Joe Biden in the US have managed to stick around despite not being the most exciting personalities on the political stage. In this article, we'll explore the quiet strategies that help these unexciting politicians maintain their grip on power. From playing the long game to mastering the art of invisibility, we'll reveal how boring can sometimes be better. So, why do these dull figures thrive while more charismatic leaders fade away? Stick with us as we dive into the world of politics to uncover the surprising truth behind why boring politicians stay in power. You might just find that the quiet ones have the loudest impact. Chapter 1: The Power of Predictability, Why Stability Wins Votes. People often think voters want excitement. But research shows otherwise. A 2020 study from the Journal of Politics found that in times of uncertainty, voters prefer stability over bold change. This is where the boring politicians come in. They're predictable, and that predictability brings comfort. Take Angela Merkel, for example. As Germany's chancellor for 16 years, she rarely made headlines for dramatic speeches or bold charisma. Instead, Merkel was known for her cautious, methodical approach to governance. Voters came to rely on her steady hand. And this wasn't just a fluke. Merkel's approval ratings hovered around 70% during much of her tenure, proving that predictability can be a winning strategy. Why does this work? Most voters don't want to gamble with their futures. They'd rather stick with someone who won't rock the boat. This explains why boring politicians often thrive in times of crisis or economic instability. They don't have to be exciting, they just have to be safe. Boring politicians play the long game. They don't chase quick wins or dramatic changes. Instead, they focus on slow, steady progress. It's a strategy that flies under the radar but pays off in the long run. Voters feel secure knowing what to expect, and that sense of stability keeps these leaders in power. Chapter 2: The Grey Suit Strategy, Mastering Political Invisibility. Some politicians rely on charisma, others, like those in grey suits, rely on becoming almost invisible. Their strategy? Avoid controversy, stick to the middle ground, and never make waves. It's the political equivalent of blending into the wallpaper. Sounds dull, right? But it works. Here's an interesting fact. According to political science research, politicians who avoid extreme stances are more likely to be re-elected. In the US, the American Political Science Review noted that incumbents who adopt moderate positions enjoy higher chances of staying in office, especially in polarized environments. Why? They're seen as reliable, even if not particularly inspiring. The grey suit strategy works because it avoids alienating any group of voters. Instead of standing out, these politicians blend in. They are neither loved nor hated, they simply exist, and in politics, that can be enough. Consider Japan's former Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga. He was known for his unassuming personality and low-profile style. Yet, he climbed the political ladder because he never courted controversy. He mastered the art of staying neutral, making him a safe bet for leadership when the country needed calm. Another benefit of this strategy? Boring politicians often avoid scandals. Because they don't take bold or risky actions, there's less chance for mistakes. And in the media-driven world of politics, no news is often good news. Avoiding the spotlight can be a surprisingly effective path to long-term power. Chapter 3: The Boredom Effect, How Voter Apathy is Their Secret Weapon. There's a dirty little secret in politics: voter apathy helps boring politicians win. Studies show that when voters are disengaged, they tend to default to the familiar. A 2018 survey by Pew Research Center revealed that 65% of non-voters in the US cite disinterest in politics as their primary reason for not voting. This apathy creates an advantage for incumbents who are already in power. Voter apathy allows boring politicians to stay in office by reducing the threat of change. When fewer people vote, it's easier to maintain the status quo. Political scientist Anthony Downs coined the term rational ignorance to describe how most voters don't bother learning the details about candidates or policies, they stick with the familiar name they recognize. Take Mitch McConnell, the long-serving U.S. Senator. Despite being seen as uninspiring by many, he has maintained his seat for decades. Why? Many voters know his name and don't feel strongly enough about politics to seek out an alternative. He doesn't need to excite people. He just needs them not to care too much. Low voter turnout often benefits those already in power. If voters aren't engaged, they won't push for change. This is why, boring, politicians often aim to keep things just bland enough to prevent a surge in opposition. They understand that voter fatigue can be their biggest ally. Voter apathy also works because it creates a sense of inevitability. If people believe that the same politicians will keep winning, they're less likely to bother voting. This self-fulfilling cycle keeps the same leaders in office year after year, even when their policies are uninspiring. If you enjoy exploring the fascinating world of politics, don't forget to subscribe for more insights and discussions. Chapter 4: The Faceless Leader. How institutions prop up bland figures. It might seem strange, but sometimes the system itself favors boring politicians. They fit perfectly into the machinery of politics, smooth, efficient, and most importantly, non-disruptive. The faceless leader thrives because they don't challenge the system, they are the system. Political institutions often protect these leaders because they represent stability. In fact, research from the American Journal of Political Science found that institutional support is one of the key factors in long-term political survival. The logic is simple: established parties and systems are less likely to back a charismatic disruptor. They prefer someone who won't upset the apple cart. Take a look at Canadian politics. Former Prime Minister Stephen Harper wasn't exactly charismatic. But his deep ties to the Conservative Party's structure and his consistent adherence to their platform kept him in power for nearly a decade. Harper didn't need flair, he had the backing of a well-oiled political machine. These politicians are often faceless, not because they lack personality but because they fit the personality of the institution. They become an extension of the system, making it harder for voters to separate the person from the institution. Think of them as political placeholders, they fill a seat while the real power lies behind the scenes. This dynamic isn't just seen in national politics either. Local government, often overlooked by the public, is rife with faceless politicians who quietly maintain control. Their strength comes from their connections, their loyalty to the party, and their ability to avoid controversy. Chapter 5: The Silent Charm. How dull leaders dominate backroom politics. While charismatic leaders tend to shine in public debates and speeches, boring politicians often excel in backroom politics. The silent charm they wield in private meetings and negotiations can be just as powerful, if not more so, than public charisma. The idea of silent charm was explored by political scientist Robert Caro in his biography of Lyndon B. Johnson. Johnson wasn't known for being flashy, but he was a master at cutting deals behind closed doors. His ability to navigate the smoky rooms of power allowed him to control the U.S. Senate like few before him. In fact, quiet politicians often perform better in these settings because they don't rely on theatrics. They focus on relationships, deal-making, and building loyalty. According to a study by Harvard Kennedy School, leaders who prioritize coalition building and backdoor negotiations tend to hold on to power longer than their more charismatic counterparts. Take Xi Jinping in China. While he might project strength publicly, much of his power comes from the way he has built a network of loyalists in key political positions. He plays a long game, using subtlety and strategy to secure his grip on power. The public rarely sees this side of him, but it's where the real work gets done. Boring politicians know that power isn't always about speeches or rallies. It's about control over resources, people, and processes. And backroom politics is where that control is solidified. If you've enjoyed uncovering these fascinating insights into politics, don't forget to subscribe for more eye-opening content.